After 20 years of handcrafting traditional Irish Uilleann pipes and concert flutes, Eugene Lambe felt the need to take a break, allow his soul to refresh and renew. So, at age 50, Eugene packed up and moved from Clare to the seaside town of Kinvara. There he began a 5-year project of building a 38-foot, 14-ton, heavy displacement steel-hulled sailboat. From there, this novice shipbuilder sailed around and across the Atlantic Ocean on his boat that he named Fawnee, the Irish word for a wild wanderer.
I had a little boat when I was down in Clare, but I always wanted to have a bigger boat that I could do a little bit of voyaging on. So I was thinking for a couple of years about that and looking at different plans. And I decided that it wouldn't be a very easy place to work down where I was in Clare. So I found this place and bought it. I was 50 that time, I think.
Was it something about turning 50 that encouraged you to do it?
I don't know. I wasn't conscious of that, but it just happened to be the age that I was at. I already had been working on the instruments for, I suppose, maybe 20 years, or maybe more, but 20 years professionally. Mm-hmm. And I think I wanted just to have a little bit of a break.
You built this boat yourself?
Well, I built it just in off my night time and weekends. I kept working on the instruments, and when I'd make an instrument and get some money for it, I'd buy a bit of material for the boat. So it took me nearly 5 years from starting to finish with the boat. What
kind of wood did you use for it?
It's not a wooden boat, it's a steel boat.
Steel?
Yeah.
That's kind of unusual, isn't it?
Well, I know enough about wood to know it's a very bad material for a boat. If wood was good for boats, the oil companies would make their tankers out of it. Steel is the best material.
And how did you know how to make a boat out of steel?
I bought a set of plans from a very, very nice naval architect, and I talked to him a little bit beforehand, and he had very meticulous plans made. So I just had to buy a load of steel and cut it up and put it together.
You make it sound like it's a jigsaw puzzle.
It was, yeah.
But how big is the boat?
The boat's 38 feet, weighs 14 and a half tons.
So you build this boat here on this property,
yeah.
Outside?
Yeah.
And it takes you 5 years, you get it done, and someone trailers it for you down to the...
Yeah, a very big crane on a trailer.
Do you remember the day you launched it?
Oh, I do, yeah. I remember being nervous and wondering would it float. And I'd been 5 years standing on the boat and putting things together, and then when I got in the water and went up the bay and I felt it moving for the first time, I just felt the deck moving. It was a very peculiar feeling because I'd never felt that before. Remember that moment.
Is it a sailboat?
It's a sailboat, yeah. It's a heavy displacement sailboat. It's not a very light boat that goes fast. It's a very heavy boat that will carry a lot of fuel and a lot of water, and there's a lot of living accommodation in it.
That was how many years ago that you put it in the water?
In 2003, that's 13 years ago. First trip I went down to Spain.
Did you have any crew or was it all you?
No, I went down by myself. Spain, Portugal.
Did anyone say you shouldn't go by yourself?
I would have people say those things and I'd leave them alone, put away from them. I wanted to be alone in case anything bad happened. I wouldn't be responsible for anybody else. And I've always been conscious of that. If I had somebody with me on a boat that, unless they were very conscious of the risks involved, and there aren't that many risks, but I didn't want to be responsible for somebody who didn't know anything about boats.
So how relieved were you when you pulled into port in Spain and made it?
It was exciting, yeah. At one stage I got a bit of a scare out in the middle of the Atlantic. One night I heard some water down below on the boat and I didn't know where it was coming from and I thought I was going to sink. It was in the middle of the Bay of Biscay. Having built the boat, I knew all the places where the valves were and I checked everything and couldn't find it. And I thought I was in trouble that night. It was my first big trip really. And I remember thinking to myself, I was very tired because I'd been up for a couple of nights. And I thought I might just sleep for a few minutes and think again. So I slept for about half an hour. And when I got into a calm place in my mind, I got this idea where the water might be coming in. And there was a place high up on the hull side that I'd left holes so I could put legs on the boat if I ever went to harbour. And I'd forgotten to plug one of these holes. So when the boat was leaning over badly, it had taken water in. And so I was really relieved when I found that.
And you never tipped?
Oh no, if you tipped it'd be fine, but that boat could go right over and come back up. Yeah, it's built that way. Yeah. There's 3.5 tons of lead in the bottom of it, so that's very heavy on the bottom.
How many big trips have you taken in it?
Well, after that I went down to the Canary Islands, and then I went down to the Cape Verde Islands off Senegal, and then I went across to the Caribbean.
Wow, that was a huge one.
Well, yeah, it's not so difficult though. It's 21 days across from the island of Sal in the Cape Verde. Columbus took 23 days. I did it in 21, and he had a big crew.
Do you have a crew now, or do you still continue to sail on your own?
I haven't sailed now since Eugene was born.
Your daughter?
Yeah, but I would anticipate at some stage going sailing myself again.
Adventure. You enjoy adventure.
I do. I like the idea. I still remember the feeling of being at sea for, 3 weeks and seeing an island in the distance and the excitement of land. It's also nice to be all alone. At one stage when I was going across the Atlantic, it was so calm, it was just like a mirror. And there wasn't a breath of wind, and I remember thinking to myself, now, it'd be lovely to have a swim. There was about 5 miles of water underneath, 5 miles deep. And I was terrified to leave the boat, because if I left the boat and anything happened, if I couldn't get back to the boat, I was dead. It was almost like committing suicide. But I have a ladder on the boat for getting in, I put a ladder on the back. And I had to battle with myself. It was an irrational fear, really. So eventually I got the courage up to dive off the boat, and I was careful enough. I swam around the boat first, so I could always swim back to the boat if the big wind came. But then I took a long swim. I felt great about that. And then I put a mask on and had a snorkel and look around. And I still remember the vastness of it. You could see for a long, long way under the water. There was nothing there, no fish. It was just empty. And of course there was nothing on the top either. It was sea everywhere. So it was moments like that that I will always remember. And someone told me at one stage that most human beings never go more than 24 hours in their life without seeing another human being. I had never thought of that before. But the most I have is about 35 days, I suppose. Not see a boat.
And not speak.
Not speak. Well, I'd speak to myself, play music, and some mornings when I come up, I'd sleep a bit during the night and I'd have to watch out for ships. But when I come up in the mornings, I could smell the fish on the deck, flying fish landing on the deck, and just pick them up and put them in the pan for breakfast. Get breakfast delivered.
While you're building this boat, does your music get set aside at all?
No, I kept going. Kept the making going and playing as well. But very much I was conscious that I just wanted to do it in my spare time.
Do you understand that you're becoming famous around the world for your pipes?
No, well I know I'm well known for my pipes. I was in the Azores one day walking down the slipway, and there was a guy behind me, and he said to me, "Are you on the Irish boat?" I was an Irish flag on. I said, "I am." He said, "Do you play Irish music?" I said, "I do." He said, "I play Irish music too." "What do you play?" I said to him. He said, "I play an accordion." "What do you play?" He said to me. I said, "I play the pipes and the whistle." He looked at me and he said, "You're not Eugene Lambe, are you?" And I said, "I am." He said, "I was in your house in County Clare 10 years ago." I didn't remember him, of course, but that day probably 100 people were in the house, but he remembered me. So, yeah, I've been known in various places.